prize these days for corruption. Well, there are many nominations. In recent years, governors have gone to jail from Illinois, Oklahoma, Tennessee, West Virginia, 2 from West Virginia, as a matter of fact, and Maryland. Yes, there are many nominations when it comes to corruption. But the prize may go to the smallest state of all, little Rhode Island. According to the people Judd Rose has been talking to there, the last state in size may be the first state when it comes to corruption.
Along the rugged coastline of Rhode Island, across the splendid lawns of Newport, inside one of the stately homes of Bellevue Avenue, there's a party going on.
Well, I remember a really yummy supper we had at your house. It was a yummy supper, old-fashioned food, just extra pretty and very odd.
At the end of the summer, all my things feel rather mildewy. I have to send them all to cleaners.
Yeah,
It's a gargantuan task.
For the gilded set of Newport, the end of summer means the start of what's known as the little season. One last round of parties before heading to Palm Beach for the winter.
They do have a lot of parties, yes. I don't go to all of them because I'm not really a party girl, but if you could go to one every night if you wanted to.
Tonight's dinner is hosted by Eileen Slocum, Dowager Queen of Newport society. The guests are old money, as opposed to, say, Trump money.
Well, we have I think, rather higher standards of conduct. I think we behave better.
It's a rarefied world, a world apart from the rest of the state. One of these society matrons described Newport to me as the diamond on the hand of Rhode Island. Trouble is, the hand is often in someone else's pocket.
Is Rhode Island the most corrupt state in America?
Per capita, we are high on the list.
Top of the list, maybe?
No, we're pretty high up.
U.S. Attorney Lincoln Allman is, if anything, being charitable. In a state where politics is often in the gutter, this year it fell into the sewer.
Allegations of political corruption take...
When he was arrested by the FBI...
It's the grand jury to hand up its indictments tomorrow.
Try to extort $5,000.
Tonight, another resignation.
Consider, this past July, the following took place. The mayor of Pawtucket, Rhode Island's 4th largest city, was arraigned on charges of extortion. A retired Superior Court judge was arrested for allegedly accepting a bribe. And a former probate judge was disbarred for allegedly taking money from a trust fund. And that was just 1 week. Then there's the bank crisis. These are some of the 300,000 people, a third of the state's entire population, who were cut off from their savings on New Year's Day. That day, 45 Rhode Island banks and credit unions were shut down after the private fund that insured their deposits collapsed. Several big credit unions are still closed, and more than $1 billion in deposits remain frozen.
As a Rhode Islander, aren't you embarrassed?
I'm very embarrassed.
Once a nun, Arlene Violet went on to become Rhode Island's Attorney General. Her crime-fighting zeal earned her the nickname Attila the Nun.
In Rhode Island, there is a coterie of people who perpetually benefit totally from every governmental policy that's passed. And they pass the baton around to one or the other and the other. And that's how policy is made. How will they financially benefit?
Case in point, the pension scandal. Until recently, the legislature had quietly passed hundreds of bills designed to give lawmakers and their friends fat pensions based on little or no work for the state. In one case, a state worker who was fired and spent 6 months in jail for assault got pension credit for his jail time.
There was one legislator who bought time for when he was a student passing out milk when he was a little boy. Absolutely outrageous.
And not illegal.
And not illegal.
The thing that really surprises me is why Rhode Islanders put up with it.
The people in the state are lethargic when it comes to making political change in Rhode Island. And they do accept business as usual, and, you can't beat City Hall. It's outrageous, but that's the way it is.
And that's the way it always has been in this state, known since colonial days as Rogues Island. It began as a refuge for religious dissenters, then went on to become a safe haven for rum runners, slave traders, and smugglers. And by the early part of this century, Political corruption was so rampant that the famous muckraker Lincoln Steffens wrote an expose calling this a state for sale. Well, not much has changed since then, which begs the question, just what's wrong with Rhode Island?
Everybody knows everybody. Everybody grew up with everybody.
Let's go to Providence. Pauline, good morning. You're on HJJ.
Steve Cass grew up in Rhode Island. He now hosts a popular radio talk show in Providence.
The whole state is, 30 miles across. And if you grew up in the city of Providence, the capital city, you knew everybody. Your attorney in a courtroom, for instance, might have been the roommate of the judge who's sitting on the bench. That sort of incestuous relationship happens all the time.
The smallest state and the worst state in the United States is...
Why?
Well, crooks.
It's easy to see where she'd get that impression. She lives in Federal Hill, the Italian section of Providence, and for decades, home of the New England Mafia. From this modest storefront on Atwells Avenue, Godfather Ray Patriarca ran his evil empire. Here, a Patriarca hitman arrested by the FBI describes his handiwork.
I stabbed him in the face, I stabbed him in the legs, I stabbed him in the arms, I stabbed him in the chest.
Patriarca's mob turned plenty of good fellas into dead fellas. That didn't stop Rhode Island's political establishment from embracing him.
Organized crime does not exist without public corruption. I mean, that's a given. But you would see people who would have no inhibitions about associating, mentioning their names. It was almost seen as something that gave you power.
Indeed, in 1976, Joseph Bevilacqua, a man with well-known ties to the Mafia, was elected Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court. He kept up his mob contacts and was forced to resign 10 years later.
How could that happen?
Because of the attitude in Rhode Island that this is no big deal.
Sounds like Twin Peaks or something.
Well, more like Gilligan's Island.
Ray Patriarca died in 1984, and since then, a series of arrests and convictions have left his crime family in disarray. But some still find a way to make crime pay.
Hi, Ma.
You might call these America's sleaziest home videos. The star is Peter Gilbert, a convicted killer who agreed to testify against fellow members of organized crime. Gilbert agreed to serve part of his sentence in the custody of Providence police so it'd be easier to testify. In fact, that made it easy to do a lot of things. During 3 years in police custody, Gilbert was allowed to travel repeatedly to Florida to deal drugs and to buy guns. He spent lavishly on everything from cars to jewelry, flew his dog to Florida at taxpayers' expense, even made home videos with his police pals. One of them summed things up quite nicely.
The criminal justice system has been very, very good to us, right?
One day, Gilbert died of a heart attack on the way to go skydiving. There was cocaine in his car. His guardians were nowhere to be found.
That's the past. Never look over your shoulder. Yeah? You get a stiff neck if you do.
You may as well embroider that on the state flag. Rhode Islanders seem willing to forgive just about anything. Anyone who doubts that should shake hands with Buddy Cianci.
How are you? How are you? How are you?
He's 5'7" and pudgy. He wears a wig and too much cologne and puts on makeup for public appearances. But the mayor of Providence seems to know everyone.
Hey, buddy, how you doing? How you doing? I got the pizzalas you made for me. Thank you very much.
And everyone seems to love him.
What a guy.
When he was first elected in 1974, he was 33, the youngest mayor in Providence history. 10 years later, he left City Hall in disgrace.
I did something wrong. I shouldn't have done it. I did it. But I paid a very personal and a very private and a very public price for it.
What Cianci did happened one night in 1983. Here at the mayor's home in Providence, he beat up a man he claimed was his estranged wife's lover. While several of the mayor's cronies held the man down, Cianci pummeled him with an ashtray and a fireplace.